today we're going to move on to recovering these front E30 sports seats ready to go back in the car. I think with what we learned in the last video where we recovered the rear seats, which are now nicely back in there, we're just about ready to take on this daunting task of the fronts. You'll notice the driver's seat, I'm currently sat in the passenger one, is partially dismantled down to the point of having the hinges removed. In that earlier video I showed you how to replace the failed gas struts on the seats which do the back and the height adjustment, and I replaced them with these nice items from 9 Stitch, so I'm quite excited for that to go back together and see how it actually makes the seat feel. I urge you to go back and watch that previous video so you can get caught up to speed on how we got to this point. I'm still feeling very smug about how I managed to purpose a valve spring compressor to fit those struts, but you'll see it if you saw the other video. I'm looking forward to getting the driver's seat done and back in the car, not only because I think it'll be a big upgrade on the interior, but it'll mean I can much more easily move the car around again. That's been incredibly difficult whilst sat on a stool. There's still the big question on whether I'm going to be able to retain these houndstooth centres. I'm still being really quite indecisive about that, but I've kind of come to the conclusion that I'm going to let fate decide it for us. So now I've recovered the rears, I understand that there are straps that are supposed to hold this base down here, and they've snapped, which is why that material's a bit loose and probably wearing at a faster rate than it was supposed to. So what I'm going to do is when that pad's off, I'm going to have a look and see if I can repair that so we can get this base tied back down. If we can, I'm going to retain the houndstooth. If I can't, both front seats are going full black leather. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The first thing I'm going to do today is start by stripping down this seat back for the driver's seat. Let's get it onto the bench and crack on. Because there's a chance we will be retaining that centre, I'm going to start by focusing my efforts on the bolsters. This bolster on the driver's has actually been a bit of an eyesore for some time. You can see that it's misaligned, it's come away at the top. We'll have a look and see why that is on the rear side. Quite simply, it looks like this fabric's come away from its tang and it's fraying really badly. Also, looking in the back, we can see there's been some attempt at a repair on this bolster before, because these cable ties are definitely not original. They should have been hog rings just like they are on the other side. Strange. Turns out taking the bolster covers off is very easy indeed. The bad news is this seat foam is in worse condition than I anticipated. The surface is just starting to crumble away a little bit there, and there's also this tear obviously. I think my plan currently is to glue this. If I can't save this, I'll have to look at buying a new piece of foam. Not even sure if they're available, but current plan, work with what we've got. I was hoping that I'd just be able to pop this foam off to give it some attention, but it seems to be held on pretty firm. Instead of damaging it further by trying to rag it off, I'm going to move on, uncover the other bolster, see if I can remove the centre, and of course remove the headrest. This one's in better condition, which is good news. The only thing holding on this centerpiece for the base now is the fact that it's over this bar. Instead of cutting it, I think I'm going to see if I can spread the rails and sneak it off the end. To do that, I'm going to start by taking this off and then see if they can splay a bit more. Right, so that's the driver's seat fully stripped down now, or as stripped down as I'm going to take it. The foam, like the seat back on the base, appears to be moulded in place. It would definitely get destroyed by trying to take it off, so I'm not going to go any further in trying to remove these. The metal parts all seem in very good condition, to be honest, just incredibly dirty. A couple of scabs of rust that need treating on this base, but other than that, nothing's broken, which is great news. The rails look a lot worse than they are. They've got surface rust, so I'm going to get those cleaned up and repaint them, which is the next thing I'm going to do. After that, we're going to turn our attention to this horrific hole in the side bolster and see what we can do to repair it. I'd rather try and repair it than replace it at this point, but we'll find out about that. Before we proceed with that, let's speak again about this driver's seat base, which is my main concern with reusing the houndstooth. We can see that there's this bar here with hog rings on that's stuck to this spring in the seat base that's supposed to tension the centre of the seat base fabric. What's happened is there are plastic straps hidden inside here which are unfortunately fully disintegrated and falling apart in your hand and mostly missing to start with. Unfortunately, what that means is I would have to remove this cover completely to replace that with something, and I honestly don't really know what, and I'm not much of a sewer. A seamstress? That's a female. I'm also noticing that the stitch line that would have originally run along it is completely missing. I didn't even realise this would have had a stitch line, it's that missing. So the more I disassemble this, the worse condition this houndstooth looks. It's incredibly thin here, so I'd be really sceptical about what I could do on the other side of it to put those straps back in place. So right now I'm thinking it's going to have to be the leather, because it would be a shame to go to all of this work and effort and end up with a very worn looking driver's seat still. the seat rails cleaned, repainted and re-greased, so they're sliding nice and smoothly now, which is excellent, a big improvement. I also got a little bit carried away and I re-greased the thigh support mechanism. I'm sure I'll be cursing myself about that later when I'm manhandling it and getting covered in grease. A few people in the comments of my rear seat reupholstering video were recommending I use a steamer to try and re-plump up the foam. And I had a look at the Coastal Cushion Co channel and saw some incredible results they were getting with their steamer. As you're just seeing now, it didn't seem to make a huge difference for mine. I was trying for quite a good while off camera. Maybe my steamer isn't powerful enough, or maybe this foam isn't quite the same type as they were refreshing. Luckily, I don't think they look that squashed as it is, and if nothing else, they're a lot cleaner now they've been steamed, so I'll move on. But now we're arriving at a very difficult part of the job. We need to do a full-on foam repair on this seat bolster. It looks like a chunk's been bitten out of it at some point, and it's also starting to split along its length. And I think what's happened to it basically is somebody at one point got in the car, put the thumb through the grey cover, which has a matching hole in it, and that's torn the foam, and then years and years of getting in and out and neglect after that has made it worse and worse, and here we are. So I'm planning to transplant a square of new foam in by neatening up this damage and cutting a new piece to fit it as closely as possible. From my research, this seems to be the standard way to repair this type of damage. However, it looks very fiddly and I've never attempted to do anything like this before, so we'll have to see how I get on. Cross your fingers. So I've got some very similar density foam to the original here. Just had this on the shelf from a previous project. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clean up this hole so that I can make a filler piece that's quite neat and glue it in so it fits as seamlessly as possible. Some tape over it now, and I'm going to walk away for half an hour and just give it time to go off and set. Well, for my first attempt at doing something like this, I'm actually really thrilled with it. It looks like it's going to be completely imperceivable by the time I've got those covers on. Bear in mind they are foam backed, as you'll see. My only concern is when I'm trying to stretch on the leather, I might tear these back open and it might become a bit of an issue. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the other bolster, get that one covered and learn how it's done there. Make sure you're carefully matching up your new cover with your old one so that you're starting to work on the correct one, because it's not as obvious as you might think, because all four of them are actually quite similar. So you'll notice the original cover has holes in it, some of which look like they've been machine cut. The Lseat one doesn't, so we'll need to cut those as we go. Also, there is a wire that needs transferring from the original one into the new one. This is where hog rings will go through on the inner side, you'll see when we get to that. So the best way to do this, apparently, is to fit it on the front side first, invert the rear, give it a good stretch, tuck it over, and now we're going to get ready to put the hog rings in, which go between the wire I added and these springs here. So I'll just neaten that up. So now I'm happy that I've got the cover tucked over well at both ends and I've got it in roughly the right spot. I'm going to start by getting the first hog ring in. I'm going to go for one of the middle ones so I can avoid building in some kind of ripple from one end to the other. I gave a bit of an introduction into how hog rings work in the previous video where I did the rear seat recovering, with great success might I add. To briefly recap, these are the hog rings I'm talking about, and they look like little staples, as you can see. So the pliers are special hog ring pliers, and you load in a hog ring, and when you squeeze it together, the pliers, the hog ring end closes and overlaps, creating a permanent attachment to the two bits of material you're trying to connect together. Of course, all the gear that I'm using to get this job done, I'm going to make sure is linked in the description, so don't forget to check that out, including the glue I was using earlier. Cutting the holes for the bosses is actually a little bit nerve-wracking, because if you get it in the wrong place you're going to end up with a ripple that you can't get rid of. Also, it required two sets of hands, one to stretch, the other to cut. It looks pretty bad right now, but I think when I've got this part of the fabric folded over, it's going to be as good as you could expect. Don't forget there's a big hinge plate that sits over this as well. Quite happy with that so far. The way to fit the leather over these barbs is to prise the barbs out, stretch the leather, and you can compress the foam to help you until you can see where it wants to go through the leather. Cut just a bit higher than where it wants to go through using a knife, teeny little slit. Force the leather through the slit and then bend the barb back, and you end up with them through like that, and you can bend them flat so they won't come out again. Well, I'm really thrilled with the result on that. For a first one, I couldn't be happier. Let's see if we can replicate that result on this side. We'll whiz through this one. So worth noting on this other side that there's more complexity to it because we've got the thigh adjustment as well as the levers, but there is a cover, a plastic cover that goes over those, which might hide some of our sins. Nevertheless, I'm going to be as careful as I can not to mess these cuts up, although even the originals look a bit crappy. So let's get this new one stretched on. Looks good from this side. Lovely job. Well, these have genuinely come out really well. Whilst I'm encouraged and whilst I've got my hand in, I'm going to do the ones on the backrest as well and get all 4 bolsters done on this driver's seat. Right, there are 2 reference points here. We've got this corner which wants to go over the end here, and we've got this corner here which wants to go over this sharp corner at the bottom of the bolster. So the first thing to do is get it on, make sure those 2 reference points are in the right position so it's not shifted up or down, then get the hog rings into this metal bar which is covered in paper and through the wire, and then you'll stretch it just like we did on the base round the back where it goes over those tanks. Right, now we'll do the tangs on the back, again starting from the middle so we don't get any ripples in it. The bottom corner of the bolster we just pulled across here and put it onto one tang. It was definitely a 2-man job to stretch that over. This corner simply tucks in And it's handy that I haven't disassembled the passenger seat so I can keep referencing it because I couldn't remember. And the seat back goes through some threads here, which I've poked a hole for. And the whole hinge that this seat back slots onto goes through a hole here, which I've poked a hole for. Really happy with how that one looks as well. So now I can move on to the other side. So on this side we've got the added complication of the lever to access the rear seats. And because it's such a long lever, it means it's going to make it a bit difficult to work out exactly where to cut it on the new cover. I'm thinking now that when I get the hog rings on the inside, I'm really going to struggle to pull torsion on this so it goes over this long lever, which might mean I actually need to take a bit of a leap of faith and cut this before I hog ring it on. That's a bit difficult because although I have a slot on the original cover, it doesn't really match the shape of the new ones, and the piping ends up sitting in a slightly different place on the new Lseat covers versus the originals. So I'd be a fool to simply trace this on, even though it's really tempting to do. So instead, I'm going to turn this over. Looking at the overlap on the other side should give me a reasonable guide for how much overlap I'm going to have on this side too. And if I try and match that up roughly, I can see that I'm going to need to cut around here. So for now, I've marked the two ends of this slot with a Sharpie on the new cover, just so I've got my reference point. I'm not going to cut the slot until I have got the hog rings on and I've confirmed that I've got to take that leap of faith. Interestingly, it looks like my dots are kind of agreeing with where this wants to land, so maybe that wasn't crazy after all. Now we're going back now. Right. Perfect. Right, well that's all 4 bolsters done on this driver's seat, and it's gone incredibly well, and all the cuts seem to be in the right place. You really do want to take your time with this, and it's very taxing on the hands as well. The next section is to do the centre of the seat back. It looks like it might be a bit less taxing on the hands and less stretching involved, which is good. As mentioned earlier, I'm a little bit gutted to not be retaining this houndstooth, but it really is quite worn, and in for a penny, in for a pound. I am going to go for it with the all black leather. It always looks great when it's mint, and I can't go to all this effort and end up with worn looking seats. Looking at this new cover and comparing it to the foam, we can see there's a few things to note. Firstly, we've got the grommets for the headrests, which are unmarked on the new cover, so we'll need to work out where they're going and cut them carefully. There's also a bar that runs across here, and I'll need to cut these and turn them into straps so that we can attach hog rings to pull them through this foam, which will make the whole thing taut. You probably saw what those look like on the rear seat I did, but you'll see how it goes if you didn't. Another thing to note is there may need to be another bit of a foam repair on this one. Unfortunately, it looks like it's split, so I think I might stick something over this to just kind of strengthen the entire foam back. Other than that, I think it's just held on by staples. It feels like there might have been some glue at some point between the fabric and the foam, but if there was, it's not hanging on very strong anymore. So the first thing to do, get this old cover removed, and let's look at the other side of this foam and work out how to proceed. Now that cover's off, we can see that the foam is actually in really good condition. The only thing wrong with it is there's a split on the back here. Not sure how that's happened, but because I'm going to need to attach my cover to the other side and stretch it round, I'll need to staple or use hog rings, not decided yet, to fasten it on, and I'm just not sure that this is going to hold up to that anymore. So I started off by recycling one of my rear seat covers, the rear back, to use this, and my plan was to glue this on here like that. After gluing this crack up, with this glued on, it'd give it support and repair it. Also, give it the side effect of replumping this foam. But in mocking it up and putting it onto the actual frame, I came to the conclusion that the foam here is too thick and it's going to make this look strange, like some kind of weird Chesterfield chair, which I don't want. So instead of using the foam, I've ripped the foam apart from the actual cover, and I've cut a cover which is nice and thin but quite sturdy material. And with this glued on, it should give me that same effect without adding too much thickness to the actual foam. So the seat should look OE when finished, but it's going to have this adding durability. So that's had overnight to dry now, and it's looking really solid, very firmly stuck on. It's a little bit stiff. I might be using a little bit too much glue, but for some reason I just can't seem to help myself. But the next thing to do is to start getting that new cover on now. And with this, I've got a really firm base to attach it to, so I'm feeling quite confident. The next thing to do is to get our wire in place here and get those straps on the new cover poked through and hog ringed in. And what that'll do is get our new cover aligned correctly on this piece of foam. However you want to do it. The footage you just watched of us putting these hog rings in was actually wrong. This is now the second attempt and it's now corrected. The first time we did it, we put quite a lot of effort into stretching the leather around this centre foam and pulling it really taut before putting the hog rings in. When we'd finished, having thought it had gone perfectly well, we came to put this centrepiece between the bolsters and we could see down the gaps. And we could see the hog rings that we've put in the bolsters to hold the leather on, which definitely wasn't right, and we couldn't work it out for a little while. So what we did in the end, we cut all of the hog rings out that we'd put in and we put them back in, but slackened them off a couple of centimetres to not pull this centre quite as taut. When you're doing the bolsters, you get it into your mind that you want the leather as taut as possible, but you can't apply that same logic to the centre because you'll make it too small for the gap. It needs to fill the gap fully. So you don't really want to compress this foam when you're putting the hog rings in. You're just putting the hog rings there to hold it in position really. Another thing to note is we added a little bit of glue, spray glue like before, between the foam here and the centre, right the way along, so now that's held nice and firmly in place. Next thing to do is get the bottom hooked onto the seat back. For those of you screaming at the screen about the fact I haven't cut the holes for the headrest, it's actually intentional. When I was looking at other guides for how to do this, one of the main bugbears people were describing was not being confident about where to cut these holes. With this now on, I've got very clear visual on where I need to cut them. So I can cut them in situ, unhook this, slip the backer for the grommet in, and put the grommet in, and I'll know they're in the exact perfect spot. Now I've added some extra hog rings in the middle just to kind of tie this all together and hold the back firmly against the frame, and I'm quite happy with the result. These grommets sit strangely proud, but I'm not really sure what I could do about that. When the headrest's on, I don't think you'll be able to see it anyway. But yeah, so far so good. Well, with the backrest up to that stage, we'll turn our attention to the seat base, which looks a little bit more complicated thanks to the whole thigh support section. First thing to do is take the houndstooth off the old base, see how it's all affixed, and stick my backing on, similar to what I did with the back. good again. You can see where these straps have sadly perished and snapped, which is what has led to this wear through, unfortunately. That's a real shame, that. Right, so first thing to do, get the straps cut and prepared, and then we'll be able to position this correctly on there and get it stuck all the way on. Excuse today's audio interruption. Man with chainsaw is felling trees out there, so bear with me on that. So the next thing to do is to get the thigh support situated in the cover. As you can see, there are two plastic strips which clip onto this lip and this lip respectively. The base is just in the way, so I'll move that for now while we do it. even with the thigh rest in place, there's nothing really that clarifies the location of the front of the main seat foam pad. We know we've got the back that we need to tension over, but it can slide back and forwards and there's nothing obvious. So instead of just taking a punt, what I'm doing is I'm feeling for where this foam was located before in relation to the springs and this mechanism, and you can feel there is a witness mark for it. So I'm going to locate it exactly where it used to be on the foam, and I'm going to get some hog rings in place to hold that solid where it is, and then we can pull tension on the back. That's the centre successfully installed on the seat base and recovered, and I'm actually really happy with how that's gone. The straps in the middle seem to have pulled in quite a lot tighter than the ones did on the seat back, which is kind of strange, but I'm hoping these creases kind of relax a bit over time, but we'll see. Hopefully I won't have to go in and release those straps a little bit. I think I'm going to leave it as it is for now. And with that, I'm going to move on to trying to get the seat rails back on. Let's hope I can remember how that goes back together. Oh yeah. Amazing. The final thing to do is the headrest. It looks like a very simple one piecer. Let's hope it turns out to be as simple as it looks. So it appears that there's some kind of rail that runs along the bottom that the material front and back pushes into and is kind of barbed so it won't come out, and that's kind of replicated here, so it would push in and it won't come back out. I can also see a couple of staples in there which I'm going to try and pull out, and then hopefully I can just kind of finesse this out and we can see exactly how it goes together. Easier than expected, and you can see that this rail is actually a plastic rail with tabs on that hook onto the fabric where it's got the plastic edge. So from here, rather than just trying to rag this off, I think what's going to happen is the inside, this metal mechanism for tilting, should pull up and out separate from the foam, I think. Let's find out. Oh yes, I'm right. What a strange thing. I'm now going to try and get the foam into the new leather headrest cover. Now, a good trick to do this that I've seen online is you put this foam into a plastic bag and then use a vacuum cleaner to draw a vacuum and shrink it down so that you can sneak it into the cover. Before I do that, I quite fancy my chances of just sticking it in there, so let's see if it's going to work. Right, get the back. That's a very elegant design, that. Actually the easiest part of the whole install doing that. The Lseat kit does come with a big old piece of leather to reupholster this seat cover. It's a shame that they folded it so it's got a big old crease in it, but you could probably get that out with some heat. This looks potentially, especially with the foam, like one of the hardest things to do. I'd probably even consider trying to remove that foam before I stuck this on here, but because mine are already in black vinyl and actually are in good condition, I'm not going to bother. I might save this piece of leather for any future repairs, or maybe if these ever get damaged, I'll have these on standby. Well, would you look at that? I think I've absolutely excelled myself with this, especially considering it's the first time I've ever done anything of this kind. I'm actually really proud of how it's come out. If I was being picky, I'd say the area under the headrest on the centre is pulled a little bit too tight, making these poke out, but you can't really see it with the headrest on. And also, the straps on the centre of the base pulled a little bit too tight, so they're pulling a bit deeper, giving a bit more of a crease than I'd expect, both of which will probably relax out over time anyway, so I'm thinking more than good enough. If you are doing this job yourself though, you definitely want to bear that in mind. Pull lots of tension on the bolster leather, pull very little tension on the centres, and I think that will get you the optimal result. The foam repair I did on the seat base bolster is almost already completely forgotten about because it's fully invisible. If you hadn't have seen underneath this leather, you would never know that was there at all. I still think it's a little bit of a shame to have lost my houndstooth centres. When I mocked up the houndstooth centre with the black leather bolsters, I could see that could have looked really cool and unique. So that's unfortunate, but you can't really go wrong with simple black leather. It always looks good. I'll probably be putting these houndstooth centres and bolsters, the ones that are worth saving, on eBay to help recoup some of the cost of it, but also this passenger one is in particularly good condition, so it could actually help somebody restore the interior on their own E30. Well, with the seat back in place, I can finally see the effect of those 9-stitch seat struts that are fitted in the previous video. Firstly, it rolls back and forward just fine. Hey, that can now be adjusted rather than just flopping back to nothing. That's an excellent start. Seat height is working beautifully. Happy with that. And this should be the tilt. There we go. Again, spot on. Although that one's nothing to do with the strut. Well, straight away I can tell you the seat feels a lot less flimsy than before. Make sure you check out that previous video about those 9-stitch seat struts. They actually make a really big difference, so I can recommend those. The only thing spoiling my satisfaction right now is the fact I've got a whole nother seat to do yet. And I've got to be honest with you, I've spent multiple full days doing this one across multiple weekends. It's felt like it's taken over my entire free time for as long as I can remember. So doing another seat isn't something I'm looking forward to, but at least it might be much quicker now. Hopefully this video has really helped you out if you're looking at doing the same job. Of course, I'll link everything I've used in the description as normal, so check out the tools and stuff like that, which will help speed this up for you. If this video is useful to you, don't forget to leave us a like. Also, make sure you subscribe so you can see what happens next with the E30, but don't worry, it won't be a full-length passenger seat video. Thanks for watching.